The water dripped from the shower heads in a steady rhythm as Sarah Mitchell stood in front of her locker, carefully folding her civilian clothes. The gym locker room buzzed with the usual chatter of women finishing their morning workouts. She had just joined this fitness center near the naval base, hoping to find a place where she could work out without drawing attention to herself. Sarah was used to being underestimated. At 5'4" with a lean build and soft features, she didn't fit most people's image of what a warrior looked like. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. Nothing about her appearance screamed authority or power. That was exactly how she preferred it during her off-duty hours. 3 women nearby were engaged in an animated conversation about the upcoming naval training exercise that would be taking place at the base. Sarah pretended not to listen as she changed into her workout clothes, but every word reached her ears with crystal clarity. "I heard they're bringing in some hotshot SEAL team for the new recruits," said a blonde woman in expensive athletic wear. Her name was Jennifer, and she worked as a contractor on the base. Can you imagine? Those guys are probably all muscle and attitude. Her friend, a redhead named Melissa, laughed loudly. I know, right? I bet they walk around thinking they're God's gift to the military. My brother tried to become a SEAL and washed out in the first week. He said it was the hardest thing he'd ever attempted. The third woman, an older lady named Patricia, who worked in base administration, chimed in with a knowing smile. Well, whoever they send better be good. The new training program is supposed to be revolutionary. Apparently, they've assigned someone really special to lead it. Sarah continued organizing her gym bag, her expression neutral. She had learned long ago that revealing too much too soon often created unnecessary complications. Let people make their assumptions. The truth would reveal itself when it mattered. Jennifer leaned against her locker, applying lipstick in the small mirror. Special? What does that even mean? These military types are all the same if you ask me. They show up, bark orders, and expect everyone to fall in line. I've worked with enough of them to know the drill. That's a bit harsh, Melissa said, though her tone suggested she somewhat agreed. Some of them are actually pretty impressive. But yeah, they definitely have a certain swagger about them. Sarah pulled on her running shoes, double knotting the laces with practiced efficiency. The conversation continued behind her, growing louder as more women filtered into the locker room area. A younger woman named Ashley, who couldn't have been more than 25, joined the group. She had just finished a spin class and was red-faced and breathing heavily. Are you guys talking about that SEAL commander everyone's been gossiping about? You've heard about it too? Patricia asked, her eyes lighting up with interest. Ashley nodded enthusiastically, grabbing a towel to wipe her face. Oh yeah, the whole base is talking about it. Apparently this person is supposed to be some kind of legend in the SEAL community. They say the training program they designed is being adopted by special forces units around the world. Jennifer rolled her eyes dramatically. Let me guess, another overconfident guy who thinks he invented fitness training. I've seen a dozen of them come through here. They're all the same. Actually, Ashley said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, I heard a rumor that it might be a woman. The locker room fell silent for a moment. Then Jennifer burst out laughing, followed quickly by Melissa. Even Patricia looked skeptical. A female SEAL commander? Come on, that's ridiculous, Jennifer said, wiping tears from her eyes. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for women in the military, but a SEAL, leading a major training program? That's just fantasy. Melissa nodded in agreement. I hate to say it, but Jennifer's right. The SEALs are like the ultimate boys' club. I can't imagine them letting a woman rise to that level, let alone put her in charge of something important. Ashley looked embarrassed for even mentioning it. Yeah, you're probably right. It was just a rumor anyway. Probably got mixed up in translation or something. Sarah closed her locker quietly and slung her gym bag over her shoulder. She could feel the familiar mix of amusement and frustration that came with these situations. Part of her wanted to speak up, to educate these women about what was actually possible when someone dedicated their entire life to a goal. But another part of her, the part that had survived Hell Week and countless dangerous missions, knew that words meant nothing compared to actions. The thing is, Jennifer continued, clearly enjoying holding court, the physical requirements alone would make it nearly impossible. SEALs have to carry heavy equipment, swim for miles in freezing water, and engage in direct combat. It's just biology. Men are built differently. Patricia, who seemed slightly more open-minded than her friends, offered a counterpoint. Well, I did read an article about women passing some of the special forces training programs. It's rare, but it happens. Passing training and actually leading a SEAL team are two completely different things, Jennifer said dismissively. Leadership at that level requires years of combat experience, tactical knowledge, and the respect of hardened warriors. No offense to women, but that's just not realistic in that world. Sarah headed toward the exit, but not before she heard Melissa's final comment. Can you imagine showing up for SEAL training and finding out your instructor is some petite woman? The guys would probably walk out laughing. It would be a joke. The laughter that followed echoed through the locker room as Sarah pushed open the door and stepped into the hallway. Her jaw was tight, but her eyes held a glimmer of something that might have been anticipation. In 48 hours, she would be standing in front of 200 naval personnel, including these same women who worked on base. The official announcement hadn't been made yet. Commander Sarah Mitchell, one of the first women to complete SEAL training and the designer of the new Special Warfare Advanced Readiness Program, was still operating under relative anonymity. She had spent the last 10 years proving herself in the most demanding military operations imaginable. She had led teams through hostile territory, completed missions that remained classified, and earned the respect of some of the toughest warriors in the world. But to the women in that locker room, she was just another face in the crowd. Someone unremarkable, someone to gossip about without realizing she was standing right there. Sarah walked to the cardio area and stepped onto a treadmill. As she began her run, she thought about the upcoming week. The training program she had developed would push participants to their absolute limits. It combined cutting-edge sports science with lessons learned from decades of special operations experience. Military leaders from 6 different countries had already requested access to her methods. 48 hours. That's all the time left before reality crashed into assumption. Sarah increased the speed on her treadmill, her breathing steady and controlled. She had nothing to prove to anyone, really. Her record spoke for itself. But she had to admit, there was a certain satisfaction in knowing what was coming. The women in that locker room would learn an important lesson very soon. Never judge a book by its cover, and definitely never underestimate someone based on their appearance. In the SEAL teams, Sarah had learned that the most dangerous operators were often the ones nobody saw coming. She finished her 5-mile run without breaking a sweat, then moved to the weight area. As she worked through her routine, she noticed Jennifer and Melissa had moved to the machines nearby, still chatting away about their theories regarding the mysterious SEAL commander. Sarah smiled to herself. 2 more days. Just 2 more days. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the base early. The sun had barely risen above the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She drove through the security checkpoint, her military ID already in hand. The guard recognized her immediately and snapped to attention. "Good morning, Commander Mitchell," he said, his voice respectful. Sarah nodded with a slight smile. "Morning, Petty Officer Davis. How's your family?" "Doing well, ma'am. My daughter got accepted to college. That's outstanding. You must be proud." The brief exchange was typical of Sarah's leadership style. She made it a point to know the people around her regardless of rank. In her experience, the strongest teams were built on mutual respect and genuine human connection, not just hierarchy and protocol. She parked in her designated spot and grabbed her briefcase. Inside were the final materials for tomorrow's big presentation and the official start of the training program. Admiral Richardson, the base commander, had scheduled a full assembly where Sarah would be formally introduced to everyone involved in the program. As she walked toward the administrative building, Sarah passed several groups of personnel engaged in their morning routines. Some were doing physical training, others were heading to their duty stations. A few recognized her and offered respectful greetings. Most had no idea who she was. Inside the building, Sarah made her way to the conference room where she would be meeting with Admiral Richardson and his senior staff. The hallway was lined with photographs of distinguished naval officers and historic moments in the base's long history. She had walked this corridor many times over the past month as she prepared for this assignment. The conference room door was open. Admiral Richardson, a tall man in his late 50s with silver hair and a commanding presence, looked up from a stack of documents and smiled warmly. "Sarah, right on time as always. Come in, come in." "Good morning, Admiral," Sarah said, setting her briefcase on the table. "I've been reviewing your training schedule," the Admiral said, tapping the papers in front of him. "I have to say it's ambitious. Some of my staff are concerned about the intensity level, especially for the first week. Sarah had expected this conversation. Sir, with respect, the whole point of the program is to identify weaknesses early and address them systematically. If we start soft, we won't get accurate baseline assessments. Admiral Richardson chuckled. I'm not questioning your methods, Commander. Your reputation precedes you. I'm just preparing myself for the inevitable complaints that will come flooding into my office. There will definitely be complaints, sir. I don't doubt it. The Admiral leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. You know, when I first received orders that you would be leading this program, I'll admit I had my doubts. Not about your capabilities, understand, but about how the personnel would react. Change is always difficult, especially in traditional military environments. Sarah understood what he wasn't quite saying. A female SEAL commander was still a rarity, and not everyone in the military had adjusted to the reality that women could excel in combat roles. I'm used to skepticism, Admiral. It's been part of my entire career, but results speak louder than opinions. Indeed they do, he agreed. And your results are exceptional. The operations you've led, the innovations you've brought to training methodology, the respect you've earned from your peers. That's why you're here. Just be prepared for tomorrow. Not everyone on this base knows who you are yet. Sarah thought about the women in the locker room and smiled slightly. I'm aware, sir. The rest of the morning was consumed by meetings and final preparations. Sarah reviewed equipment inventories, checked training facilities, and coordinated with the medical staff who would be on standby during the more physically demanding exercises. Every detail mattered. In SEAL training, she had learned that the difference between success and failure often came down to preparation and attention to the smallest elements. During lunch, she decided to return to the gym for a light workout. It helped her think and relieved stress. As she entered the locker room, she immediately heard familiar voices. Jennifer, Melissa, and Patricia were there again, along with a few other women. I'm telling you, I have it on good authority, Jennifer was saying as Sarah opened her locker. My boss attended the preliminary briefing. The new commander is apparently very strict. No nonsense by the book, all business. Is it definitely a man, then? Ashley asked. She was sitting on a bench lacing up her sneakers. Jennifer shrugged. My boss didn't specify, but come on. Use your common sense. Melissa jumped in excitedly. I actually saw some guys from the training group yesterday. They said whoever is running the program designed something called the Advanced Readiness Protocol. It's supposed to be brutal. Apparently it's based on actual SEAL selection courses. That sounds intense, Patricia said, looking concerned. I hope they know what they're doing. We can't afford injuries or problems that might reflect badly on the base. Sarah changed into her workout clothes, listening to every word. It was interesting to hear how information spread and transformed as it passed from person to person. Some details were accurate. Others were wildly speculative. What I want to know, Jennifer said, lowering her voice, is whether this commander person is going to be approachable or one of those military robots who only speaks in tactical jargon. Ashley laughed. Why does it matter to you? You're not in the training program. True, but I work on base. These things affect the whole atmosphere around here. Plus, I'm curious. Whoever this person is, they must be pretty special to get assigned something this high profile. Sarah finished changing and headed out to the gym floor. She opted for the rowing machine, a full-body workout that allowed her to think while exercising. As she pulled against the resistance, her mind went through the checklist for tomorrow's assembly. The presentation would begin at 0800 hours. All personnel involved in the training program would be present, along with department heads and support staff. Admiral Richardson would provide opening remarks, then introduce Sarah. She would then outline the program structure, objectives, and expectations. What happened after that would depend entirely on how people reacted. Sarah had been in enough high-pressure situations to know that you couldn't control other people's responses, only your own actions. She would be professional, clear, and firm. The training program was designed based on proven methods and extensive research. It would work if people committed to it. After her workout, Sarah returned to the locker room to shower and change back into her uniform. The same group of women was still there, though their conversation had shifted to weekend plans and gossip about various base personnel. As Sarah dried off and got dressed, Jennifer suddenly addressed her directly. Hey, you're here a lot. Do you work on base? Sarah looked up, her expression neutral. Yes, I do. What department? Melissa asked with friendly curiosity. Special operations, Sarah said simply. Jennifer's eyes widened with interest. Oh, really? So you must know about this big training program everyone's talking about. What have you heard? Sarah finished buttoning her uniform shirt. I've heard it's supposed to be very comprehensive. Challenging but effective. Do you know who's running it? Ashley asked eagerly. I do, actually. The women all leaned in, waiting for her to elaborate. Sarah picked up her gym bag, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I'm sure everyone will find out soon enough. With that, she headed for the exit, leaving the women looking puzzled and slightly frustrated. She could hear them speculating about her cryptic response as the door closed behind her. The rest of the day passed quickly. Sarah conducted final walkthroughs of the training areas, ensuring everything was in place. She reviewed her presentation one more time, making minor adjustments to improve clarity. She checked in with her assistant team leaders, all experienced special warfare operators who would help implement the program. As evening approached, Sarah sat in her temporary office on base, looking out the window at the ocean in the distance. The sun was setting, creating a spectacular display of colors across the water. Tomorrow would be a turning point, not just for this training program, but potentially for how women in special operations were perceived. She wasn't naive about the challenges ahead. There would be doubters, critics, and people who questioned her authority based solely on her gender, but Sarah had faced worse. She had survived situations that would have broken most people. She had earned her place through blood, sweat, and unwavering determination. The women in the locker room represented a broader mindset that still existed in many places. They assumed that leadership in elite military units looked a certain way, fit a certain profile. Tomorrow, those assumptions would be challenged directly. Sarah gathered her materials and prepared to leave for the day. As she locked her office, she felt calm and focused. This was what she had trained for her entire career. Not just the physical challenges or tactical operations, but the opportunity to prove that excellence had no gender requirement. Tomorrow morning would be interesting indeed. The morning of the assembly arrived with clear skies and a crisp breeze from the ocean. Sarah woke at 5 in the morning, her internal clock trained from years of military discipline. She went through her usual routine with practiced efficiency, a quick workout, a nutritious breakfast, and careful attention to her uniform. Standing in front of the mirror, she adjusted her Navy service uniform, making sure every detail was perfect. The ribbons on her chest told a story of dedication and achievement, each one representing missions, qualifications, and commendations earned through extraordinary effort. Her seal trident pin sat prominently above the ribbons, the golden eagle clutching a trident anchor and pistol. It was the most recognizable symbol of naval special warfare, and she had earned it through one of the most grueling selection processes in the military. Sarah arrived at the base an hour before the assembly. The auditorium where the presentation would take place was already buzzing with activity. Technical staff were setting up audiovisual equipment. Security personnel were checking credentials, and early arrivals were finding seats. She walked through the backstage area, reviewing her notes one final time. Admiral Richardson found her there looking relaxed and confident. Big day, Commander. How are you feeling? Ready, sir. Good, I've been getting interesting feedback from some of the staff. Apparently, there's quite a bit of speculation about who you are. Several people have mentioned seeing you around but not realizing your position. Sarah smiled. I've kept a low profile intentionally. It seemed easier than dealing with preconceptions. Well, those preconceptions are about to get shattered. I hope you're ready for the reaction. I've handled worse than surprise and skepticism, Admiral. At 7:45, the auditorium began filling rapidly. Personnel streamed in from all departments, finding seats in the large space that could accommodate nearly 300 people. The front rows were reserved for senior staff and officers directly involved with the training program. Behind them sat junior officers, enlisted personnel, and civilian contractors. Sarah watched from backstage as the crowd settled in. She spotted Jennifer, Melissa, and Patricia sitting together in the middle section, still chatting animatedly. Ashley was a few rows behind them. None of them had any idea what was about to happen. The murmur of conversation filled the auditorium. People were clearly curious and excited about the announcement. Sarah could hear snippets of speculation and gossip from her vantage point. I bet it's Commander Jackson. He's been doing special projects lately. No way, I heard it's someone from outside the base. someone with a big reputation. My money's on Captain Reynolds. He's got the experience. At precisely 8 o'clock, Admiral Richardson walked onto the stage. The crowd immediately quieted down, everyone standing at attention. The Admiral gestured for them to sit, then approached the podium with the confident bearing of a lifetime naval officer. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. What we're about to discuss represents a significant advancement in how we approach special warfare training and readiness. He paused, letting his words sink in. The auditorium was completely silent now, every eye focused on him. For the past 2 years, Naval Special Warfare Command has been developing a new training protocol. This protocol incorporates lessons learned from decades of operations, cutting-edge sports science, psychological conditioning techniques, and innovations in team dynamics. The goal is to produce operators who are not just physically capable, but mentally resilient, tactically creative, and adaptable to any situation. Admiral Richardson gestured to the screen behind him, which displayed the program logo and title, Special Warfare Advanced Readiness Program. This program has been tested and refined through multiple pilot phases. It has received endorsement from the highest levels of military command, and most importantly, it has produced measurable improvements in operator performance across every metric we track. The Admiral looked directly at the audience, his expression serious. To lead this program, we needed someone exceptional, someone with combat experience, training expertise, and the respect of the special warfare community. Someone who could design curriculum, lead by example, and push people beyond what they thought possible. Jennifer leaned over to Melissa and whispered, "Here it comes. I bet it's some grizzled veteran who looks like he could bench press a tank." After an extensive selection process, the Admiral continued, Naval Special Warfare Command identified the perfect person for this assignment. This officer has completed multiple combat deployments, designed training protocols now used by Allied forces around the world, and holds qualifications that very few people in the military have achieved. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone leaned forward slightly, eager to see who would walk onto that stage. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to introduce the commander of the Special Warfare Advanced Readiness Program. Please welcome Commander Sarah Mitchell. For a split second, there was confused silence. Then Sarah walked onto the stage. She moved with calm confidence, her uniform crisp, her bearing unmistakably military. The seal trident gleamed on her chest. Her expression was professional and composed, showing no reaction to the gasps and whispers that rippled through the audience. In the middle section, Jennifer's mouth literally fell open. Melissa grabbed her arm, eyes wide with shock. Patricia sat frozen, her face showing complete disbelief. Ashley looked like she might faint. "That's the woman from the gym," Jennifer whispered, her voice barely audible. Around the auditorium, similar reactions played out. People who had seen Sarah around the base but never realized who she was suddenly made the connection. Others, who had never seen her before, were clearly processing the disconnect between their expectations and reality. Sarah reached the podium and shook Admiral Richardson's hand. He stepped aside, giving her the floor. She took a moment to look out at the audience, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Good morning. I know some of you are surprised right now. That's okay. Surprise is a natural human reaction when reality doesn't match expectations." Her voice was clear and authoritative, filling the auditorium without needing to shout. Years of leading teams in high-stress situations had taught her how to command attention and project confidence. Let me start by addressing the elephant in the room. Yes, I am a woman. Yes, I am a SEAL. And yes, I will be leading this training program. If anyone has a problem with any of those facts, my office hours are posted, and I welcome professional discussions about concerns. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd, breaking some of the tension. But here's what I want everyone to understand from the beginning. This program is not about me. It's not about making history or breaking barriers or proving points. This program is about making every single person who goes through it better at their job. Stronger, smarter, more capable, more resilient. Sarah clicked a remote, and the screen behind her changed to show detailed statistics and performance metrics. The data speaks for itself. Pilot groups who completed this training showed a 43% improvement in mission completion rates. Physical performance markers increased by an average of 37%. Team coordination scores went up across the board. These are not minor improvements. These are game-changing results. She paused, making eye contact with different sections of the audience. I designed this program based on 15 years of operational experience. I've been deployed to 11 different countries. I've led teams through hostile territory. I've made life or death decisions under conditions most people can't imagine. Every element of this training is based on real-world requirements, not theoretical concepts. The screen changed again, showing the program schedule and structure. The training is divided into 4 phases, each building on the previous one. Phase 1 focuses on baseline assessment and physical conditioning. Phase 2 introduces advanced tactical scenarios. Phase 3 emphasizes team coordination under stress. Phase 4 is final validation through realistic mission simulations. Sarah walked away from the podium, moving to the edge of the stage to be closer to the audience. I'm not going to lie to you. This will be hard. There will be days when you question why you signed up. There will be moments when you want to quit. That's intentional. The whole point is to push you past your perceived limits and show you what you're actually capable of achieving. In the audience, Jennifer sat completely still, her earlier confidence and dismissive attitude completely gone. She looked at Melissa, who seemed equally stunned. Both women were realizing the implications of their locker room conversations, and the sick feeling of embarrassment was beginning to set in. But here's what I promise you, Sarah continued, her voice taking on a more personal tone. If you commit to this program, if you push through the difficulty and trust the process, you will come out the other side as a better operator and a better person. You will have skills and knowledge that very few people possess. You will be part of something bigger than yourself. She clicked the remote again, and the screen showed photos from the pilot programs, images of diverse groups of personnel engaged in various training activities. This program has already changed lives. I've watched people discover capabilities they didn't know they had. I've seen individuals transfer. Sarah continued her presentation, diving into the specific details of the training program. She explained the scientific principles behind the conditioning protocols, the psychological research that informed the stress management components, and the tactical innovations that made the program unique. As she spoke, the initial shock in the room gradually transformed into something else. People began leaning forward, taking notes, asking questions. The quality of her presentation, the depth of her knowledge, and the confidence with which she delivered information were impossible to ignore. The physical conditioning component is based on functional fitness principles, Sarah explained, using the screen to show exercise demonstrations. We're not interested in how much you can bench press in a gym. We care about whether you can carry a wounded teammate 2 miles through rough terrain. We care about whether you can maintain accuracy with your weapon after swimming a mile in cold water. Every exercise has a direct operational application. A young lieutenant raised his hand. Commander, what's the failure rate for this program? Sarah nodded, appreciating the direct question. Good question. In the pilot programs, approximately 30% of participants did not complete all 4 phases. But here's the important part. Most of those who didn't finish weren't removed. They chose to withdraw, usually because they weren't mentally prepared for the intensity. Physical capability was rarely the limiting factor. It was mental toughness and commitment. She clicked to the next slide, showing psychological resilience training methods. That's why Phase 1 includes significant mental conditioning work. We teach stress management techniques, cognitive behavioral strategies, and mindfulness practices. These aren't soft skills. These are combat multipliers that can mean the difference between success and failure in real operations. Another hand went up, this time from a senior enlisted SEAL in the front row. Sarah recognized him immediately. Master Chief Petty Officer James Rodriguez, a legend in the special warfare community with over 20 years of service. Commander, I've heard about your program from guys who went through the pilot. They said it changed how they approach everything. Can you talk about the team dynamics component? That seems to be what people mention most. Sarah smiled slightly. Rodriguez was known for being tough but fair, and his question showed he was genuinely interested in the program's effectiveness. Absolutely, Master Chief. The team dynamics training is probably the most innovative aspect of the program. We use real-time biometric monitoring, communication analysis software, and scenario replay technology to help teams understand their interaction patterns. She pulled up a video on the screen showing a team going through a training scenario. Various data overlays showed heart rates, stress markers, and communication flow patterns. Teams watch themselves operate and analyze what worked and what didn't. They see how stress affects decision-making, how communication breaks down under pressure, and how leadership emerges naturally in different situations. It's incredibly powerful because you can't argue with objective data about your own performance. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. That's impressive, ma'am. I'd like to see that in action. You'll get plenty of opportunity. Master Chief, you're assigned as one of the Phase 3 instructors. A ripple of approval went through the SEAL operators in the front rows. Having someone of Rodriguez's caliber involved added credibility to the program. Sarah spent the next 30 minutes going through additional details, answering questions, and addressing concerns. She was thorough, knowledgeable, and unflappable. Every question was met with a clear, detailed answer backed by research or operational experience. In the middle section, Jennifer sat in stunned silence. She had stopped whispering to Melissa entirely, instead focusing all her attention on the stage. The woman she had dismissed so casually in the locker room was commanding a room full of military professionals with absolute authority. Every assumption Jennifer had made was being systematically destroyed. Melissa was having similar thoughts. She kept remembering her comment about men walking out laughing if they found out their instructor was a woman. Looking at the SEAL operators in the front rows, she saw nothing but respect and professional interest in their body language. No one was laughing. No one was dismissive. They were treating Commander Mitchell exactly as they would any other highly qualified officer. Patricia felt a deep sense of embarrassment washing over her. She had worked on base for 15 years and prided herself on knowing what was happening in different departments, yet she had completely failed to recognize one of the most accomplished officers on the entire installation. Her assumptions about gender and military capability had blinded her to obvious signs of competence and authority. Ashley, the youngest of the group, was processing the situation differently. Rather than embarrassment, she felt a surge of inspiration. Seeing Commander Mitchell up there, so confident and capable, shattered limitations Ashley hadn't even realized she had internalized. If this woman could become a SEAL and lead a major training program, what else was possible? As the presentation concluded, Admiral Richardson returned to the stage. Thank you, Commander Mitchell. Outstanding briefing. Are there any final questions before we wrap up? A hand went up in the back. Sarah gestured for the person to speak. Commander, I have a question that's probably on a lot of people's minds. How do you handle the skepticism? I mean, you're in a role that very few women have achieved. That must come with challenges. Sarah considered the question carefully. It was personal but legitimate. It does come with challenges, she acknowledged. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But here's what I've learned. You can't control what other people think or feel about you. You can only control your own actions and your own performance. I decided a long time ago that I would let my work speak for itself. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Every single day, I know that some people are watching me more closely than they would a male officer in the same position. That's just reality, so I make sure that my performance is beyond reproach. I outwork, outstudy, and outprepare everyone around me, not because I have something to prove, but because that's the standard I hold myself to. The auditorium was completely quiet, everyone absorbing her words. But here's the thing I want everyone to understand. I'm not here as a representative of women in the military. I'm not here to make a political statement. I'm here because I'm qualified for this job and I will do it to the absolute best of my ability. Judge me on that basis and we'll get along just fine. The response was immediate and powerful. The entire auditorium erupted in applause. It started with the SEAL operators in the front rows and quickly spread throughout the room. People stood clapping not just politely but enthusiastically. Even those who had been skeptical found themselves moved by her authenticity and directness. Jennifer stood with everyone else, clapping mechanically, her mind racing. The woman who had overheard all those dismissive comments in the locker room had just received a standing ovation from 300 military personnel. The contrast between the assumptions and the reality was overwhelming. As the applause continued, Sarah simply nodded in acknowledgement, maintaining her professional composure. She wasn't someone who needed external validation, but she recognized the significance of the moment. The acceptance from her peers and subordinates mattered, not for her ego, but for the success of the program. Admiral Richardson stepped forward as the applause finally died down. Ladies and gentlemen, Training begins tomorrow at 0600 hours. All assigned personnel are to report to the Special Warfare Training Facility in appropriate physical training gear. Commander Mitchell and her team will take it from there. Dismissed. The auditorium began emptying slowly as people filed out, many lingering to talk about what they had just witnessed. The SEAL operators in the front rows moved toward the stage, clearly wanting to speak with Sarah directly. Jennifer grabbed her things quickly, avoiding eye contact with Melissa and Patricia. She felt sick to her stomach. Every word she had said in the locker room echoed in her mind like an accusation. The casual dismissiveness, the laughter, the absolute certainty that a woman couldn't possibly be leading this program. All of it felt shameful now. "We need to talk," Melissa whispered urgently as they made their way toward the exit. "Not here," Jennifer hissed back. "Let's just go." But as they approached the door, they found themselves caught in the crowd. People were moving slowly, many still discussing the presentation. Jennifer had no choice but to shuffle along with everyone else, desperately hoping to avoid any interaction with Commander Mitchell. Near the stage, Sarah was surrounded by SEAL operators and senior officers, all engaged in animated discussions about the training program. Master Chief Rodriguez was gesturing enthusiastically, clearly excited about the upcoming phases. Several junior officers were asking detailed questions about specific training modules. Sarah handled each conversation with the same calm professionalism she had displayed during the presentation. She answered questions, offered clarifications, and made notes about concerns that needed addressing. This was her element, discussing tactics and training with fellow professionals who understood the stakes. A young female lieutenant approached hesitantly. The first day of training began before dawn. Sarah arrived at the Special Warfare Training Facility at 5 in the morning, well before any of the participants were due to show up. The facility was a sprawling complex that included obstacle courses, swimming pools, classroom buildings, and simulation areas. Everything had been prepared the night before, but Sarah insisted on personally checking every detail one more time. Her instructor team was already there when she arrived. 6 experienced special warfare operators, including Master Chief Rodriguez, who had volunteered to be part of the program after yesterday's presentation. They were reviewing the day's schedule when Sarah walked into the briefing room. "Morning, Commander," Rodriguez said, looking up from his clipboard. "We're ready to rock and roll." "Good morning, Master Chief. Everyone clear on their assignments?" The instructors nodded. They had been through extensive preparation, but Sarah knew the first day was always unpredictable. No matter how well you planned, people would surprise you with their reactions to intense training. "Remember," Sarah said, addressing the group, "our job today is assessment, not destruction. We're looking for baseline measurements, identifying strengths and weaknesses, and establishing the foundation for the next 3 months. Push them hard, but smart." At 5:45, participants began arriving. They came in small groups, most looking nervous and uncertain. The training class consisted of 50 personnel from various specialties within naval special warfare, all selected for their potential to benefit from the advanced program. Sarah watched from a distance as they assembled in the main training area. Some were already stretching, preparing their bodies for whatever was coming. Others stood in tight groups, talking quietly and glancing around at the facility's intimidating equipment. At precisely 6 o'clock, Sarah stepped out of the observation building and walked toward the assembled group. The morning sun was just beginning to paint the sky with color, and a cool breeze came off the ocean. It was perfect training weather. The participants immediately snapped to attention as they recognized her. Sarah could see the mix of emotions on their faces: curiosity, nervousness, determination, and in some cases, lingering skepticism. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying easily across the training area. "Welcome to the Special Warfare Advanced Readiness Program. For the next 12 weeks, this facility will be your second home. Some of you will love what we do here. Some of you will hate it. All of you will be changed by it." She began walking slowly along the line of participants, making eye contact with each person as she passed. "This program is built on a simple philosophy. The only way to discover your true capabilities is to push past what you think is possible. Your mind will tell you to quit long before your body actually needs to. Our job is to teach you the difference between genuine physical limits and mental barriers." Sarah stopped in the center of the formation. "Today is about assessment. We need to understand where each of you currently stands in terms of physical fitness, mental resilience, and tactical knowledge. The data we gather today will inform your individual training plans going forward. She gestured to the instructors positioned around the training area. You'll notice we have some of the most experienced operators in naval special warfare serving as instructors. Master Chief Rodriguez over there has more combat deployments than most of you have years of service. These men know what real operational demands look like, and they've designed today's assessments to reflect actual mission requirements. One of the participants, a young SEAL named Lieutenant Morrison, raised his hand tentatively. "Yes, Lieutenant?" Sarah called out. "Ma'am, what's the pass-fail criteria for today?" "Good question. There is no pass-fail today. This is pure assessment. However, I will tell you this. If you give anything less than 100% effort, we'll know. And if you quit before your body actually forces you to stop, there will be consequences." She let that sink in for a moment. The human body is capable of incredible things when the mind doesn't get in the way. Today you're going to learn that firsthand. The morning assessments were brutal but precisely measured. Participants rotated through different stations, each designed to test a specific aspect of fitness or capability. Swimming endurance, obstacle course speed, weight carry distance, marksmanship under fatigue, problem solving under stress. Every element was monitored and recorded. Sarah moved between stations, observing how people approached the challenges. Some attacked each task with aggressive intensity, burning themselves out quickly. Others paced themselves strategically, showing tactical thinking in their physical approach. A few were clearly struggling but refused to quit, their faces showing pure determination. At the swimming station, a female lieutenant named Chen was on her 20th lap, her arms clearly fatiguing but her stroke still technically sound. Sarah watched as Chen's pace slowed, but her form remained disciplined. When she finally climbed out of the pool after completing all 25 required laps, she was shaking with exhaustion but had met the standard. "Good work, Lieutenant," Sarah said quietly. That was mental toughness on display. Chen looked up, surprised that the commander had been watching. "Thank you, ma'am. I wasn't sure I could finish, but you did. Remember that feeling. That's the gap between what you think you can do and what you actually can do. We're going to work on closing that gap." At the obstacle course, Morrison was struggling with the rope climb. He had already attempted it twice and failed to reach the top bell. His hands were raw and frustration was clearly building. On his third attempt, he made it 3/4 of the way up before his grip failed and he slid back down. Master Chief Rodriguez walked over, his expression stern but not unkind. "Lieutenant, what's the problem?" "I can't hold on, Master Chief. My hands are giving out." "Your hands are fine. Your brain is telling them to give out because it's uncomfortable. You've got another attempt in you. But this time, before you start climbing, I want you to visualize yourself at the top ringing that bell. See it in your mind before you do it with your body." Morrison looked skeptical but nodded. He closed his eyes for a moment, took several deep breaths, then grabbed the rope again. This time his ascent was smoother, more controlled. When his hand finally struck the bell at the top, the sound rang out across the training area, and several other participants stopped to applaud. Sarah watched the interaction with approval. Rodriguez understood what she was trying to accomplish with this program. It wasn't just about physical capability. It was about developing the mental tools to push through barriers. As midday approached, the participants were visibly exhausted. The morning had been a non-stop series of demanding physical and mental challenges. But Sarah noticed that despite the fatigue, morale seemed high. People were encouraging each other, offering tips and support, forming the kind of bonds that would be essential for the team-based training in later phases. During the lunch break, Sarah gathered the instructor team for a quick assessment meeting. "Initial impressions?" she asked. "Overall, pretty solid group," Rodriguez said, checking his notes. "We've got about a dozen who are performing well above standard. Another 25 or so are right where we'd expect them to be at this point. The remaining 15 are struggling but showing good heart." Another instructor, Lieutenant Commander Hayes, added his observations. "The mental resilience piece is interesting. We've got some people who are physically average but mentally tough as nails, and we've got a few who are physical specimens but struggle when things get uncomfortable." Sarah nodded. This was exactly what the program was designed to identify and address. The afternoon sessions will tell us more. Fatigue makes everything harder, and that's when we really see what people are made of. The afternoon proved Hayes's point immediately. The obstacle course times that had been challenging in the morning became nearly impossible in the afternoon. The swimming distances felt twice as long. The mental challenges that required focus and problem-solving became frustrating puzzles when people were exhausted. But Sarah also saw something beautiful happening. The participants were helping each other. When someone struggled with an obstacle, others offered encouragement and advice. When someone's time was slow, teammates cheered them on. The competitive environment was balanced by a growing sense of collective purpose. At one point, Sarah watched as Morrison helped Chen over a particularly difficult wall obstacle. Chen had attempted it 3 times and couldn't quite get over the top. Morrison boosted her up, then climbed up himself to coach her technique from above. When she finally made it over, both of them were grinning despite their exhaustion. This was what Sarah had hoped to see. The program worked best when people understood that individual excellence and team success were not contradictory goals. The best operators were those who could perform at a high level, while also elevating everyone around them. As the day progressed toward its final challenges, Sarah noticed a car pull into the visitor parking area near the training facility. 2 women got out, and even from a distance she recognized them. Jennifer and Melissa from the gym. They stood by their car, clearly uncertain whether they should approach. Sarah continued supervising the training, not acknowledging their presence. If they wanted to talk to her. 6 weeks into the program, the transformation was undeniable. The training facility that had seemed impossibly demanding on day 1 now felt almost familiar to the participants. The obstacles that had defeated them initially were now conquered with efficiency and confidence. More importantly, the group had evolved from a collection of individuals into a cohesive unit. Sarah stood in the observation room overlooking the main training area, watching as her participants executed a complex scenario involving multiple objectives, limited resources, and constant curveballs thrown at them by the instructor team. What impressed her most wasn't their physical performance, though that had improved dramatically. It was their decision-making under pressure and their ability to adapt as a team. Lieutenant Chen, who had struggled through those initial swimming laps, was now coordinating a team of 5 through a building-clearing exercise. Her commands were crisp and confident, and her teammates responded with precision. The young woman who had doubted her ability to finish 25 laps was now a leader. Others looked to when things got difficult. Morrison, the lieutenant who had failed the rope climb 3 times on day 1, had become one of the program's standout performers. More than that, he had taken on an unofficial role as a mentor to struggling participants, using his own early failures as teaching moments. Sarah had watched him spend extra time helping others master techniques he had only recently learned himself. Master Chief Rodriguez entered the observation room, coffee in hand. "Morning, Commander. They're looking good today." "They are," Sarah agreed. "The progress has been remarkable." "You know what's interesting?" Rodriguez said, settling into a chair. "I've been doing this kind of training for 20 years, and I've never seen a group bond this quickly or this deeply. Usually it takes months before you see this level of trust and cooperation." Sarah nodded. "The team dynamics training makes a difference. When people see objective data about how they interact, when they can watch themselves operate and analyze their patterns, it accelerates the learning process." "It's more than that, though," Rodriguez observed. "I think having you as the commander changes the dynamic. You push everyone equally hard, regardless of rank or background or gender. There's no favoritism, no old boys club mentality. People respond to that kind of fairness." Sarah considered his words. She had been so focused on the technical aspects of the program that she hadn't fully considered how her leadership style might be affecting the culture. But Rodriguez was right. She had worked hard to create an environment where performance was the only metric that mattered. Down in the training area, a situation was developing. One of the teams had encountered a problem in their scenario. They were supposed to move a heavy equipment case across rough terrain while maintaining security. But the case was proving too heavy for their current configuration. Sarah watched as they struggled for a moment, clearly frustrated. Then something remarkable happened. Chen, who was leading a different team on the other side of the complex, noticed their difficulty. Without being asked, she directed 2 of her team members to assist, even though it meant potentially slowing down her own team's progress. The combined team quickly moved the equipment, then split back up to continue their respective missions. "Did you see that?" Rodriguez said, leaning forward. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Mission success over individual glory. Chen just risked her team's time to help another team, because she understood that overall success matters more than being first. Sarah smiled with satisfaction. That's the culture we've been building. When people understand that the mission is bigger than personal achievement, they make better decisions. Later that afternoon, Sarah conducted individual progress reviews with each participant. These one-on-one sessions had become a key component of the program, allowing her to provide personalized feedback and address individual challenges. Chen entered Sarah's office looking nervous despite her obvious progress. She stood at attention until Sarah gestured for her to sit. "Relax, Lieutenant. This isn't an interrogation. How are you feeling about the program?" Chen visibly relaxed into her chair. "Honestly, ma'am, I feel like a different person than I was 6 weeks ago. Not just physically, though, that's obviously changed. Mentally, I'm so much more confident in my abilities. I've noticed your leadership development. That team coordination you demonstrated this morning was excellent. Thank you, ma'am." Chen hesitated, then continued. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead. How did you know I could do this?" "On that first day when I was struggling through the swimming laps, I saw you watching. I was sure you were thinking I didn't belong here. But instead you encouraged me. How did you know I had it in me when I didn't even know it myself?" Sarah leaned back in her chair, considering her answer. "I didn't know for certain, but I've learned that physical capability is rarely the limiting factor for people. Mental barriers are what stop most people from achieving their potential. You were fatigued during those laps, but your form stayed disciplined. That told me you had mental toughness even if you doubted yourself." Chen nodded slowly, absorbing this. "That's what's changed for me most, I think. I used to set limits on myself based on fear or past failures. Now I understand that those limits were arbitrary. The only real limits are the ones I choose to accept." "That's an important realization," Sarah said, "and it's one that will serve you throughout your career, not just in training." Similar conversations played out with other participants throughout the afternoon. Each person had their own story of growth, their own moment when they had pushed past a barrier they thought was insurmountable. Morrison talked about overcoming his frustration on the rope climb and how that lesson had applied to every challenge since. Another participant discussed learning to manage anxiety during high-stress scenarios. A senior enlisted SEAL described how the program had reinvigorated his passion for the profession after years of routine assignments. But the most impactful conversation came near the end of the day. A young petty officer named Johnson entered Sarah's office looking troubled. He sat down heavily, his usual energetic demeanor noticeably absent. "What's going on, Johnson?" Sarah asked. He took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I need to talk to you about something. I've been struggling with the mental resilience component of the training. The stress management techniques, the visualization exercises, all of that. I feel like everyone else is getting it and I'm just faking my way through." Sarah appreciated his honesty. "Tell me more about what you're experiencing." "It's like when we do the high-stress scenarios, my mind just goes blank. I know the techniques we've learned. I've practiced them. But when things get intense, I revert to panic mode. I start making mistakes, second-guessing myself, freezing up." "And you think you're the only one experiencing this?" Johnson looked surprised. "Well, yeah. Everyone else seems so calm and collected." Sarah pulled up her tablet and showed him data from the biometric monitoring system they used during training. "Look at these stress markers from yesterday's building clearing exercise. See these spikes? That's Morrison's heart rate jumping to 165 during the initial breach. And here this is Chen showing elevated cortisol levels during the decision-making phase. Everyone experiences stress, Johnson. The difference is what they do with it." Johnson studied the data, his expression thoughtful. "So they're feeling the same things I am, they're just managing it better?" "Exactly. And managing it is a skill. Just like marksmanship or physical fitness, it improves with practice and proper technique. The fact that you're aware of your struggle means you're actually paying attention to your internal state, which is the first step toward improving it." They spent the next 30 minutes working through specific techniques Johnson could use when he felt overwhelmed. Sarah shared her own experiences with stress management, including times when she had struggled to maintain composure during dangerous missions. By the end of the conversation, Johnson looked considerably more hopeful. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. "Commander, can I say something?" "Of course. When this program was announced, I'll admit I had doubts. I'd heard rumors about a female SEAL being in charge, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I'm embarrassed to admit that now, but it's true." Sarah nodded, unsurprised. What changed your mind? You did, ma'am. Not just because you're an outstanding officer and instructor, though you are, but because you never made it about you. You made it about us, about making us better. You've pushed me harder than anyone ever has, but you've also supported me more than anyone ever has. Gender doesn't have anything to do with that. Leadership does. After Johnson left, Sarah sat alone in her office for a moment, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This was why she had fought so hard to reach this position, why she had endured years of skepticism and doubt. Not for recognition or to prove a point, but to have the opportunity to make a real difference in people's lives and capabilities. Her phone buzzed with a message from Admiral Richardson, requesting a meeting the following morning. The message included a note that high-ranking officials from Naval Special Warfare Command would be visiting to observe the training program. Apparently, word of the program's success had reached the highest levels of command. Sarah Forwer,